Washoe County Library System welcomes you to our monthly series, the Nevada Historical Society presents High Noon with Neil Cobb. This afternoon's topic is Promoting the Significance of North Central Nevada History within a Museum and a Community with Dana Toth, Executive Director of Humboldt Museum in Winnemucca, Nevada. My name is Terry, and I'm so happy to be here hosting for you today. And now I am thrilled to introduce Sherry Hayes-Zorn.
Thank you, Terry. And hello, everybody. We're so happy to have you here today at High Noon. We so appreciate our wonderful partnership with the Washoe County Libraries and being able to share High Noon and our wonderful groups of the speakers that we've been able to line up with our host, Neil Cobb. It's been a great pleasure, and it's really allowed us to be able to open up our speaker series to have speakers from around the state actually talk about great history, museums we've been including. And so it's a wonderful opportunity, and we really do appreciate it. So let me introduce our host, Neil Cobb. He's our honorary curator, and he's been a longtime supporter here for the Nevada Historical Society. And we so appreciate him helping us share the history of the state and helping preserve his family's photography collection. So without further ado, let me introduce Neil Cobb. Hi, Neil.
Thanks, Jerry. It's always a pleasure to hear you. Our speaker today, Dana Toth, has been the executive director of the Humboldt Museum since October. This is your anniversary month of 2011, and the chairperson of Winnemucca's Historic Resources Commission since its inception in 2019. Graduating in 2005, she studied anthropology and urban regional planning at Eastern Washington University and at the University of Nevada, Reno. During a course study at UNR, Dana engaged in the volunteer work at the Fourth Ward School Museum in Virginia City, where her passion for Nevada history was solidified. And this is an expected pleasure to introduce her today. Let's welcome Dana Toth.
Well, hi, everybody. My name is Dana Toth, and like Neil mentioned, I am the executive director of the Humboldt Museum. That's my primary job. I wear a lot of hats. So the museum is located in Winnemucca, Nevada. I'm sure most of you know where that's at. I just wanted to point that out. Within the state vicinity, though, you could see Winnemucca there. Hopefully people will decide to pop off that highway and explore Winnemucca a little more. We hear that often, that people just blow right past and they stop to get gas and continue on, and then that's it. They don't really see the beauty that is out here. Of course, if you're going 80 miles an hour, you kind of miss a few things. So I hope to kind of pull out a few things, and maybe next time you pass through, you pull off and spend a little time with us. So there is a lot of history out there. Like I mentioned, people passing through, they don't recognize maybe that they are going right along the California Trail. Winnemucca, you see here with the blue star, that's our location along the California Trail here, going to the gold field. So getting out and off the road, you can go explore that trail as well. The trails group, they maintain these railroad tie signs out there, so you could take your side-by-side, or you could actually just go take your feet and take a stroll too, if you're ever that ambitious. I know some folks that do that. There is the auto tour route as well, so you could kind of imagine just looking around at the barren landscape, how hard it could have been for these people passing through here. Winnemucca is not far from what was known as a campsite and a river crossing site, because it was fairly easy to put a ferry across here, and there's some shallower areas through this area that people could pass just by walking and trudging through the water there. And actually, if you haven't seen our river, it's a dirt path right now, and it has been the last several summers. So hopefully we get some water coming this way soon. I'm sure that's what they thought too. So We also have a lot of the mining history out here, of course, just like everywhere else in Nevada. That is our main industry, really. It's a driver of our economy out here is the mining industry, really. As you see here, we have some older images of the mine inside of Rochester and the guys working, what the conditions might have looked like in the teens, maybe early 20s in that photo. The one over into the upper right-hand corner is actually a portal inside the Winnemucca Mountain. That ore that they were pulling out of the Winnemucca Mountain was taken down to, you see a mill down in the bottom right-hand side. That was a quartz mill along the bank. You see the berm there. That was originally the Humboldt Canal. That's a whole nother story. That's probably an addition on its own, the Humboldt Canal project. And then in the background, you could see evidence that the mines were really doing well out in this area. The newspapers reflected upon that, and really getting down into the newspaper history about the mining industry out here. It's very interesting to see the promoters and the financiers and some of the people who are really doing things that weren't on the up and up, if you will. It's very entertaining. You really just can't make that stuff up. So we do actually have a great photo collection too of some of the early mining history in North Central Nevada. Another big part of our history out here is the railroad. The railroad really made Winnemucca. Once the first line arrived, because we actually have two lines that come through Winnemucca, probably know two transcontinental railroads. The first one was the Southern Pacific Railroad line that came through. It was actually reached Winnemucca at the end of September 1868. And so they did the track inspections. They started transportation to points west of Winnemucca, October 1st, 1868. So that's a little earlier than they completed it. Of course, you know, the promontory point wasn't completed until May 10th, 1869. So they were actually utilizing that track until before it was totally complete. And the second line that came through Winnemucca was the Western Pacific Railroad, and that's known as the Feather River Route. That one was completed through Winnemucca in 1909, and that is actually the line that's closest to the museum. That line they still use, of course, and they take a lot of heavy loads on, and every time they do, we feel it. We're right above that track. So the walls will shake, the lights will shake. It'll wake you up sometimes or give you a jolt. So what you're looking at here in this image, we have a map generally showing where the two lines go through our county, Humboldt County. Just to the right of that is our original depot here. This depot actually was burnt down. This is from the first line. It burnt down in 1888 though. So this photo we've dated about 1885, and we do have some of the men in that photo identified, so that's really great for us. Unfortunately, most of our photographs from that era we don't have names in, so we're fortunate to know who a couple of these folks are. Excuse me. And the bottom photo there you're looking at is almost at the museum site. It's just a little bit to the east of us here, but in the foreground of that photo is the Pioneer Cemetery. And then you see the Western Pacific Railroad there, and also the depot. The depot's, I hope you can see my mouse. It's right here. The depot was demolished in 1985, and we do have some stuff from that depot here at our museum as well. Now that cemetery in the foreground there, that cemetery, a lot of those remains were relocated when they put the Malarkey overpass in, which is part of the US 95 highway system there. So about 1932, they really started relocating a lot of those remains into the new cemetery, which is, if you come to Winnemucca and you come in from the west side, from the Reno side, you will immediately see our cemetery. That used to be outside of town, a little distance from the main, Bridge Street area. But over the years, of course, just like a lot of other places, we've grown to be right up all around the cemetery there. And then finally, just off to the right-hand side, there's a traveler's guide. It gives you some information on what the trains will be coming through. And this is a really early one, 1876. So they are referring to them as immigrant trains and stuff. So a lot of people still coming out to those gold fields and to California using the train. Another big part of Humboldt County and North Central Nevada history is the agriculture. One of these, the photo at the top here is something that it's a cattle drive. Everybody probably knows what a cattle drive is, but not everybody's been caught in one before. So I experienced that one time, and I thought it was just the most amazing thing. Just stay put and watch the show. That was just a great, amazing, feel the earth rumble underneath your feet even. It was just amazing to see that. It happens. And a lot of folks that come through here, first off, don't realize that cattle drives still happen. Also, they don't realize that people still mine for gold. They think it might be just an old man with a pickaxe and a beard that they saw in a picture, and that was a long time ago. We don't do that anymore. Well, we don't, but we do still gold mine, and we still do eat beef and raise cattle. So it's just, people are disconnected from, I think, a lot of things that we do here with our, reality, I guess. So just get into the agricultural industry in Winnemucca in this area. You'll see a photo of some guys in a basket here at on a hay bale or a haystack. They are actually being lowered. They use those derricks to build up those stacks, and then they would do acrobatics, literally, it looks like, to get down off of that. I just thought that was an amazing photo to see. Down over here, you'll see the cattle being herded up and into a train. We know that the cattle industry out here in North Central Nevada was large. Miller and Lux was a very well-known ranching industry out here. Their numbers for their production were pretty impressive. And down at the very bottom there on the left-hand side is a wool team actually up near Denio. That photo is taken about 1912, and we did have a really large wool industry in this area. It's not quite as big as it used to be, but those are wool loaded trains there, and they're getting ready to take them down out to Winnemucca. And that's part of the Dufferina stuff there too. They are still active out there. Another part of our history up in this area that might not be well known is that we did have a Chinatown. Chinatown, it was roughly in the Bod Street area of Winnemucca, if you're familiar with Winnemucca. Originally, though, the Chinese weren't all in one area. They were made to convene there eventually, and a town site agent, D.H. Haskell, helped them to find an area of land that they could all live on. Unfortunately, they didn't really get along too well. The Tongs disagreed quite often. So looking back in some of the newspapers and oral histories, you could see evidence of the fighting that happened there. You can also read about the celebrations they had and the smells of the food and the gongs and all the fireworks and things like that, and what their houses look like, some of the daily activities that they did. The drawing that you see up top there was done by a man who actually was born in Winnemucca in 1901, and he lived here in Chinatown as a boy with his family. Eventually they all left, but he drew this and donated it to the museum based off his memories as a child of what he remembered Chinatown looking like in Winnemucca. It's pretty darn accurate. The photos that we do have, there are some little anecdotes in there that he added, personal effects, things, whatnot. But the family mentioned some of that stuff, such as he accidentally left a thumbprint on there, so he turned it into an extra cow that he didn't intend on drawing. So it is kind of funny to know those little anecdotes about it. Now, down just below the drawing is the Joss House that was here in Winnemucca. That was more of like a community center, a prayer temple for the community to go into. They have, if you see off to the sides of the door, there are panels there. We actually have some of those panels here at our museum. And they're pretty special. They have different sayings on all of them, but one of the most special ones that I personally think is great is it's more or less a receipt, because in 1891 the Joss House burnt down. So they were trying to raise money to build a new Joss House. So that receipt, if you will, it's on wood. It's about an 11-foot board, and it's got repetitive symbols on it. Of course, I don't read Chinese, but we've had it interpreted, and we understand that it is actually a record of those donations made from different locations around the state of Nevada, including Washoe, American Canyon, Battle Mountain, and a few other places where there were Chinese communities. And they're records of half dollars, whole dollars, gold, silver. So it's repetitive dollar amounts and donation amounts and locations. So we actually have a tally of who helped rebuild the Joss House in Winnemucca. The next couple images in the center are our bass community. They're actually taken during a bass festival here in Winnemucca. Some of these kids here you see on the bottom actually are in our mural too for our basque exhibit, and I have a photo of that I'll show you later. The Basque festivals happen every year here in Winnemucca in June, the first weekend in June, I believe. It's you can't come to Winnemucca and not have Basque food. I'm sure there's a few other places here around the state where that's the situation, but we always recommend that people try that, especially our tourists, if they've never had a family style meal like that before, to go and sit down and try that. The next images over are of our Native American here in Winnemucca, in North Central Nevada. Of course, we are Winnemucca, and there is Sarah Winnemucca. She's one of our namesake is there, and her father, old Chief Winnemucca, really is the one that we say is the namesake. So Sarah, though, she was, of course, you probably know, she was the first author of a book in English by a Native American woman. She's definitely someone that we talk about highly here at the museum, and we would love to do a better exhibit for her soon. And down below is an image that I have always really liked. It's a Central Pacific Railroad image, and it's labeled as an Alfred Hart photography. He was a photographer for the railroad at the time during construction. It's labeled as Shoshone Indians looking at the engine in the train construction, and they're just kind of in awe of this new beast that's out here. It's just makes me think of the old world meeting the new world, and it speaks volumes, I think. So there's a lot to be said there with that image. So our area too, we're not any different than the rest of the state. We have the typical Nevada Western town history. You're going to hear a lot about fires if you start looking into the history of Winnemucca. That first image there is probably if I'm guessing right, it's not labeled, of course, but I'm been staring at this stuff long enough that I think it might be the fire of 1916. Possibly it's a candidate for it. Our first really big fire in Winnemucca was in 1870. There was another one in 1891. That was a bad one. And then there was another one in 1905. That was also a really bad one. And another one in 1916. That was pretty bad, but not quite as bad as the other previous ones. So a lot of our buildings have been destroyed in those large fires. Of course, there were several individual fires, and I'll show you one of those later too, where just one structure at a time was taken down. So, you're looking at here, the center picture, that is just our saddlery building there that we still have standing today. I'll show you a little more about that later too. But the dirt roads with the water running down the middle, that just gets me. I love that. And you have also, if you look really close, there's a Chinese laundry here, a blacksmith shop there, and then all the way down to the right, that is what was the Winnemucca Hotel. It's sadly gone too. We do have stuff from the hotel here, but it's gone. The next image over is just a little further down Bridge Street, down the south direction, if you will. And you can see the dirt roads in that one pretty good too. Coming down over to the bottom right is the Winnemucca Brewery. There were several breweries that came and went in this area. It happens quite a bit, I'm sure, in a lot of the communities, but these guys didn't just have one brewery. Sometimes they had more than one. And sometimes their names are pretty similar too. We did have several German brewers out here. So when I first started working here, it got very tongue-tied trying to remember the different K names of all the different brewers out here. I got to figure it out now though. And then down over here, I just wanted to show you the freight teams coming down Main Street. That's something that happened all the time. It was probably a really common scene for everyday people here in Winnemucca. So the Humboldt Museum has been around now for 45 years. These are the museum. It opened in May 1977 after the Historical Society spent some time raising money and working to get a building to be relocated to land, which was donated by the city. So it went about 3 years, which I think is pretty quick to not only get the land, to get the donations financially, to get the building, to get the moving all set up and organized. They did get a lot of bicentennial grants in 1976 to help make that happen. But yeah, the museum opened in 1977. inside of the former St. Mary's Episcopal Church building. So the museum, like I mentioned earlier, we're located in Winnemucca. There's the little vicinity map there showing you where Winnemucca is within the state again. And this is where we are located within the city of Winnemucca. We're just off US 95. So if you're coming from Boise, you can hit us easy that way. Driving over I-80, even if you're just blasting through town, you'll be able to look over and see us. We have nice signage now. Our front of the building actually says Humboldt Museum on it. Once upon a time it didn't, so we're moving up. So here we are. This is the church building before it was moved to our site here at the museum. This is right after it was no longer used as a church, but right before it was picked up and brought over. And this site today, if you're familiar with Winnemucca, this is where Wells Fargo Bank is today. So here's the church on its wheels, on its way here. I like this photo too. You can see the linemen lifting the line to get that building through town. And here is the grand opening article from the newspaper. You could see the top part there. They held an artist showing for their grand opening. And the bottom is the basement that the building was set upon. That basement is now finished. I think I have a photo. I'll show you of that later. So yeah, I had to show you too. Friday the 13th must have been a good day for the opening. I don't know, made me laugh to think that they picked that day. So after the church arrived, the next building to get to the museum was a Greenstein building, and that was donated by Sam and Louise Greenstein. It came from down by the Western Pacific line. It used to be a Nevada hide and junk store was the name. So it sold repurposed goods. Some early on they tanned and processed hides. So you can actually see some of that charring that was left over from the tanning of the hides in the ceiling of that building. And I'll show you some photos of this stuff on inside later in a little bit. After the Greenstein building, the first story of our brick building was constructed in 1984, which was completed in 85. And we always get asked, how did they get all the automobiles into the building? Because it looks, you know, you can't get them out the door these days. But before it was finished, before the interior walls were finished, this is how they did it. They actually rolled them in through a roll door that is still in our yard. But there now is walls inside there that where you could not fit. We can't do that again. They brought in and they're here. So we're going to have to take some walls out in order to get some of these vehicles out if they ever do leave the building. And then we get another story. This is 2000. They started this. It was completed in 2001. So you can see the scaffolding going up. The next thing to arrive at the museum facility here would be our Richardson House, Richardson House. We have a couple different names for it. We usually just call it the Richardson House. This one too, it's going down Reinhardt Lane. If you're familiar with Winnemucca, they took this route in order to avoid some of those power lines. And now we do have the interstate overpass and things that this could have caused some issues with. So going all the way, the long way is how they had to take this house out a few miles out of town and bring it back in. And so just quickly, I've been at the museum now for a little over 11 years. And I put on here during the last 10 years, we've made some changes. So I just kind of wanted to hit some of those real quick. We've done a new lower plaza. You can see the construction of that plaza there. That was done for a few different reasons. Not only do we get to enjoy it for events, but our building needed some stability too. We noticed that there was cracking in the brick of the main building, not just through the mortar, but through the bricks too. So it was suggested to us to do some digging down, do a geogrid barrier, and put this plaza in. So it's supposed to help slow some of the movement. We've also got our road paved now. Originally, when I first started here 11 years ago, we had a dirt road. Getting that road paved really has cut down on the dirt in our building. And if you have ever worked in a museum and you know how you need to keep stuff clean, if you live in Nevada, you know, you get bug dust pretty much everywhere you live. It's really hard to keep things clean, but having a paved road really made a huge difference in our facility. Also, it really helped to mitigate some of the water drainage issues that we were getting. Our building was moving towards the river with the help of that water, because the water was actually seeping into the ground and going under our building. Everything off Winnemucca Mountain was rushing towards us. So not good, but we got it fixed. We also have a retaining wall that we put in. We've put French drains in for our roofing drain systems. We did a new entry that was poured. We put all of those utility lines underground, and we built a new viewing plaza, which I'll show you in another slide here in a little while. Now, this is just the exterior improvements. There's quite a few things we did inside too over the years. So I wanted to show you what an average visitor walking in the door will see today. We have 3 acres right now, 4 buildings, a wonderful view, and lots of parking. I always tell people we have parking enough for an RV, or and occasionally we do let those RVs stay overnight here. We have plenty of room for that too. You also get free admission. That's something you don't see a lot of places. We just ask that you sign in. And these ladies are my helpers, so you will get to see them when you come in the door. My new assistant is Lindsay Meyer. She's at least a 4th generation Winnemuccan. And she's the lady on the left. The lady on the right is Nellardy. She's been working in our gift shop now for a couple years. She's wonderful. She's the greeter. You walk into the door, she's going to say hello to you. She will say hello until you say hello back. She's wonderful. These ladies really help me keep things going over here. So the museum's mission is to collect, preserve, exhibit, and promote the history, prehistory, natural history, and cultural heritage of North Central Nevada. And these are some of the exhibits you're going to see as a result of that. So our basket exhibit, this is one that we've really done a lot of work on. This has been, I would call, a great community collaboration. I've worked very closely with the Winnemucca Bass Club on this exhibit, and it was a phased project. So we have a mural in the background that was pretty much our phase 1. Let's get the mural going, and the stage area. Phase 2 is the cabinet off to the right, and phase 3 is the kiosk in the middle. So what you're looking at here, the mural, is a dreamscape. It's more or less from left to right, telling the story of the Basque heritage in this area. The left is actually the old world, the right is the new world. So it's a dreamscape of that transition of coming across. There are a few things in there that, you know, maybe a lot of people don't know. A lot of people coming to the museum have never heard the word Basque. They don't know what Basque is. So this is going to introduce them from the ground up. Also, we have that kiosk there. So that mural, the painting in the background, is an interactive image on that kiosk. So you can touch that mural and learn about all those little embedded things in that mural. You'll learn why there's a train in the sky. Why is there a ship over there in Europe? What is it with the trees? What is it about that red building in the background and those kids dancing? You might recognize those kids dancing. They were the kids in that photo from the Bass Festival I showed you earlier. So this exhibit is special in many ways, not because only did we have a great collaboration, but the actual items in this exhibit, the fibers of it, what the materials that were used to create it. You'll see the bricks there in the middle. Those came from the Winnemucca Hotel. All the wood for the stage area, all the wood for that cabinet, that also came from Winnemucca Hotel. The red building in the mural, that is the Winnemucca Hotel. That was what we called the oldest building in Winnemucca, but it started its slow demolition in 2015, and it was completely demolished by 2019. So that lot's still vacant, but we have the memories of the old hotel. And it was definitely one of the best hostelers here in Nevada and Winnemucca. And that to the left side is the back side of the Winnemucca Hotel. It says Winnemucca Hotel Bass Family Style Meals. That was actually part of a polo court. We have only one photo of it, the handball game that Bass would play. They did play back there. They had a court for it here in Winnemucca. And then down below is a photo of the Budweiser team visiting the Winnemucca Hotel in 1954. If you look really close at that, you will be able to see their chimpanzee. They actually stopped at every single bar and saloon that they delivered to and took pictures And then actually in a couple of these photo locations they stopped in, they got out and went inside and sat that monkey on the bar, or chimpanzee on the bar, and gave him beer. So it's interesting. Can't make up this history. If you haven't seen it, you should. It's interesting. So our Basque exhibit, we're really proud of. Again, that was a collaboration with the Basque Club, and we did get support grant funds from the Nevada Humanities to make that happen. Local artists and local carpenters did work with us too. Another exhibit you'll see is the Humboldt Soda Works. We've actually called it Return to Humboldt Soda Works because of the stencil we had. That stencil, you see that image there right at the very top. That stencil was used for all the crates. You'll see the green crates in that exhibit. It's pretty neat. So what we did was try to recreate the interior based off the photo that you see at the bottom right. That's an inside view from the 20s. We're not exactly which year, but it is definitely 20s, inside of the Humboldt Soda Works factory there that was behind the Depot House Saloon right on Railroad Street. And that, of course, like a lot of other things, burnt down in the 60s. It has been rebuilt, but these items in here are on long-term loan, so they're not gifted to the museum, but this is something that many of our visitors, a lot of our people who helped us put this together, nobody wants to see this one go away. They really enjoy this exhibit. And I think it's pretty neat to point out that you see Al Seeliger in that bottom right-hand photo. He has his hand on agitation tank. Those agitation tanks are still here in our exhibit too, and they still turn. There are still paddles in them that turn. And I would imagine that this equipment could still be used if it was sanitized properly. And also in that exhibit, you'll see there's the table that they used for labeling the bottles. We still have that table here, of course. And there's a crown corker sealer machine. I know there's not too many of those left in the country. And then there's a siphon bottle filler all the way over to the right there in that scene. And then off to the right-hand corner is just one of the ads. This Humboldt Soda Works started, well, the Depot House Saloon started in 1870. The Humboldt Soda Works was definitely happening right around that time too. I believe it was secondary though to the saloon. Something else you'll see at the museum is our resource library and archives. So the photo here to the left is our negatives, more or less, in our museum collection. You'll see the light colored tan boxes. That is all one person's collection. Actually, Glenn Couch, he had a photography studio and store here in Winnemucca on Bridge Street for many years, and he took some of the best photos that we have. The negatives are the oversized negatives, so we can't just easily convert those into a usable photograph. We have a couple people in town that help us with that. Karen Rogers is one of our board of directors, and she used to have a camera shop also. So she's been really great at getting those turned over for us. But there's probably close to 12,000 negatives in those boxes, and give or take, I'd probably say give, there's probably more than that. Also over to the right-hand side is a shot of some of our library. We have another side of it. Of course, I can't get it all in my picture, but all of our books are organized by subject matter, and we let people come in and sit down and read. If you're a local, we might let you take one with you if you're a member of the museum, but typically those are just books for people to sit in the museum and look at. There are some people who will come in and see what books we have on our shelves so they can go home and order their own copies too. Again, we automobile collection too, we have downstairs. If you come to Humboldt Museum, you'll see that. We have 10 automobiles in our downstairs collection. At the top there is our curved dash Mary Oldsmobile. That one has been called a 1902, maybe a 1903. We're not 100% sure which year that is. Down below that though, you'll see the Safeway stores. This is actually a photo of a parade in Lovelock, and you'll see our Ye Mary Oldsmobile in the parade there. It's definitely not 1902. It's probably closer to a 1940s, 50s parade. But this is the last time we've seen it. I have no other photos anyway of it actually running on its own. We do have some photos of it being pulled with a rope, but no, this is the only one I've found so far of it actually driving under its own power. So you'll see down there on the left side a few more of our cars, buggies, same thing on the right hand side, a couple more of our cars, buggies. In the very, very back of this right-hand photo, you'll see a gas pump there, but you'll see the stop sign and a little filthy barrel. You might remember that. Some of you might know what that is, an anti-littering campaign, I think from the 1960s. Now, both those signs there, they came from Jerry Aaron, who I know has been on this High Noon program in the past. He's a wonderful man, so happy to know him, and he has some great stuff out there. Another thing you'll see here at the Stein building at the Humboldt Museum, I showed you a photo earlier of this building right after its arrival to the museum in the mid 80s. Right here, though, this was a photo that was taken 3 days ago or so of the interior. So you see what you'll see if you come to visit. We have in the back room is more of a cow camp style kitchen. We call it pretty rustic. And then on the right hand side over here is our barber room. We also have, that's not in this photo, on the left hand side of that room is some medical history. And then we have the Richardson House. The Richardson House was built in 1899. It was originally constructed on Railroad Street, and it's an Eastlake style of home. And Eastlake style homes were out of popularity by probably 1875 on the East Coast. However, being out here in the rural West, we were okay with being a little out of the high trend, I suppose. This house, though, actually has closets in it. They're pretty good sized closets. And I know a lot of homes from this time really didn't have too many closets. A lot of houses just had the armoires. And this house, though, it's been fully renovated. They started it in 2005. We finished renovations in 2012. So off to the right-hand side, you'll see some of the interior pictures. Those were just taken yesterday. All of the items in the house date 1920s or earlier. We tried to hone it in to a time period. And everything in that house is local, except for the pump organ in the front room. So it did come from a local antique dealer, but they actually obtained that in the Midwest. So if somebody has a pump organ that is from Winnemucca, we will trade. We'll swap that out. There is another pump organ down in the pink room, we call it, that actually came from Davytown. Davytown is nothing anymore. It's more, I think there's a building and a half maybe still standing. It's not much. It's off of Sand Pass Road, which is off of US 95 and 140. And our St. Mary's Episcopal Church, you'll see here. This is what it looks like today. This is, of course, like I told you earlier, this is where the museum started. So in here, you'll see that, well, the church was hit by lightning in 2001. So some of the wood in the top had been replaced. I hope you could see my mouse. There's cross beams here. Those are original, but those boards running in this direction have been replaced. All the wood and the floor is original. The basement, actually, oops, let me go back. The basement has had some work done. This is a little bit of an older photo for the basement there. In January, we had a broken pipe and it flooded that basement with almost 3 feet of water. That was a bad day. It was a bad day. It was just the way the worlds collided, I suppose, because the thermostat died and the batteries died too. So there was no backup for it. And we got down pretty cold, so the pipes froze, and then we got pretty warm, so the pipes thawed and split in 3 places. Of course, it was over the New Year weekend. So when I got here after the weekend, that's what I got, almost 3 feet of water. So we've had all the drywall replaced. Co-file, yeah, those are historic newspapers there in those drawers, but we're working with Co-file, and they're remediating every single page for us. And fortunately, I was shocked that the water didn't really smear the newsprint. It came out great. Our biggest issue though has been mold, and that's what we're up against right now. But we are getting all of those papers individually sleeved, boxed, and scanned, so they will be protected. And I know they're not the only copies out there, but we just wanted to do the best we can to preserve those going forward. And we have done some changes with our piping system. We have functioning valves now. We have figured out why the batteries backup wasn't working right for our thermostat. So there are some things that we've done to avoid that happening again in the future. But boy, let me tell you, that was a shocker walking in and seeing that sparkles coming out of the ceiling and realizing it was water. We are back to holding events again in that building. We do plays, we do art shows, presentations, weddings, book signings, you name it, we've done it, and we're going to keep doing it. There's a lot of things that go on in there, and I really push the community to utilize that facility. We don't charge for service groups to occupy it. We don't charge organizations to use it if they're raising money for a specific cause for the community, or anything along those lines, really, any of the schools or anything like that. However, if it's a private party, we do charge a little fee, and we have a contract that we have everybody who uses the space sign. Oh, and then you'll also see our viewing plaza. This is a pretty special thing here. We're up on a little hill just above the Humboldt River, and we overlook the Humboldt River Valley. This interpretive text here on these 6 panels talk about the usage of that valley over thousands of years, really. It kind of starts off with some of the early geology, but it talks about the Native American use of the corridor, the explorers coming through with the trappers, some of the early the mining traffic coming through, the pioneers, and then we talk about some of the road systems and the railroad systems, the highway systems, the airmail systems, and then we start alluding to some of the future uses of it. We're looking at the Tesla charge stations in the corridor, and maybe some of the impacts from that type of traffic coming through. And when I do the school tours with people out here, or just anybody in general, really, I always turn around and point out the radar communication stuff from the base that used to be at the top of Winnemucca Mountain too. And we finished this viewing plaza in 2017, just not long after the road was paved. And that was a 40-year anniversary for us. So we put a time capsule in when they put the cement in for that viewing plaza. And it was also just a couple months after the previous director passed away. Pansy Lee Larson was here at the museum for years and years and years. She really had a mark on everything. When I took over, I had some shoes to fill and some things to learn. She knew a lot. She took a lot of that with her. Unfortunately, it takes a while to get up to muster after somebody like that. So we dedicated that time capsule to Pansy Lee Larson. So the museum has really fostered the Historic Commission for the city. In 2018, I think it was, the city became a certified local government. In 2019, they seated their first commission. And the Historic Resources Commission has really helped to identify the resources downtown and the built environment of Winnemucca, and to know what we're working with, to help take surveys of that information, to help digest that information and give it to the public. And that's really what the museum does too. We take information, we try to take that and make it a way that people in the general public might find it a little more interesting or more accessible. So this is just the next step of doing what we're already doing. We do this research, and this is a way that we can make an impact in the built downtown, I think. So our board of directors really felt that the efforts that I'm putting into this was worthy of my time taken from the museum to focus on the built environment of downtown Winnemucca. They just complement each other so much. So you'll see some of the resources that we have in the museum, some of the resources we can access around the community through the county, online, whatnot. I just wanted to point out some of those regular things that we're going into here, and just to kind of show you how we have these resources at our hands. So why not duplicate the effort? You know, we're already doing it. So let's apply that. We have one of the earliest maps of Winnemucca, if not the earliest. I think this may be the earliest. This is an 1870 map for Winnemucca, and it only has one structure marked, but you could see where the bridge was, where the cemetery was, roundhouse for the first line through Winnemucca. And the next thing over, we use, you know, another map there. That actually is an interesting map because it does show Winnemucca on the crosshairs of the sections. You know, with the railroad communities, every other section was a railroad section. It's owned by the railroad. They had to work with Judge Barry here, Judge George Barry here in Winnemucca, to create the Winnemucca town site plat, where they combined both the private and the public, or the private lands and the railroad lands together, and they worked to create that map. So the people who had already settled on some of that land that was owned by the railroad had to actually go to Haskell, who also worked with, like I mentioned earlier, the Chinese to create Chinatown and Winnemucca. He actually had to sell them their land they were already on. But it just was a way, you know, it's interesting to learn how Winnemucca town site was formed. And a lot of that information, another person I love working with is Alan Wallace. He's a retired USGS geologist, lives in Reno, and he has been amazing with his research. He has helped us so much to understand how the earliest parts of Winnemucca were formed. And the biographies he's done, the towns, or the names, he's amazing. So hi, Alan, I know you probably see this. Another resource we use, of course, is the newspapers. And I pulled this one because it gives us an explanation of, you know, FC Robbins building. Well, we actually have a photo of FC Robbins building, so we know where that is, but it gives us a further description. It's opposite New Hotel Humboldt. Well, we obviously know where that is. We have a picture of that one burning down too. But it gives us an example of how we kind of build a puzzle. We take little clues and build it together, because sometimes it says 3 doors up or 4 doors down or next to the green boot. So we have to find those little clues and piece them together. And if it all jiggles right and just, you know, nothing disagrees, then we got it. So it's just like solving a puzzle. Another little clue we can use sometimes is the tax rolls. So we can see who was assessed for which property and when, which lots, which blocks. Was there a structure on it? Sometimes it says it's vacant land. Sometimes there says there's a dwelling on it. You never know what they might. Sometimes they're just assessed for chairs or, you know, just silverware, things like that. Another resource here is our Google Earth and our Sanborn fire insurance maps. These are great. If you've not heard of Sanborn fire insurance maps, they were a way to keep record of what buildings were where, what their compositions were, how many stories, what roofing materials, where's the windows, do they have any boilers in there, what kind of gasoline engines, where the hydrants are located. And it was obviously necessary. Winnemucca, like I mentioned, had seen so many fires, lots of these communities out west see fires. So it just made sense for them to know where their resources would be to squash those fires and understand maybe where some incendiary things could be lying that they may not know on surface. So we have several years of those. The earliest set of those Sanborn fire insurance maps start in 1885, which is great. So there you go, 1885, 1897. We have a 1904, 1907, 1912, 1930, and 1943. And I feel like I'm forgetting something. And then down here, and one more resource that we like to tap into sometimes is the oral histories that are at the Humboldt County Library. They give firsthand accounts of some very interesting things. So some of the projects the Historic Resources Commission is currently working on is creating a preservation plan. That is my biggest thing right there. I'm so happy that we're finally seeing that happen. We got a grant from SHPO to make that happen. We're working with CATS Environmental Consultants. Zoanne Campana is our actual consultant. She's been to Winnemucca and had our workshops with us, which is actually this photo down here in the bottom left. You could see this is one of the 2 workshops we held while she was here. that plan should be complete next spring. We have a rough draft that we're expecting in about a couple weeks. So then we'll have comment periods, and like I mentioned, the final draft should be ready by spring. Some of the goals what I'm expecting to come out of that would be nominations. Winnemucca really it should look at doing some nominations. I know that is probably going to be suggested, whether it be individual nominations or small district nominations, and that could really help make a big impact to downtown. One other thing we're doing now is every May we're recognizing that it is Historic Preservation Month. So we have had the city issue a proclamation recognizing the resources we have in our community. And also we have done an awards program too, recognizing the efforts of some of our citizens who have done preservation on their own buildings. So over here, you'll see me and our Mayor Stone there and the proclamation from last year from 21. And then down at the bottom is one of the award recipients from 21 as well, JC Jackson, and the mayor and myself. So we have other efforts we're working on too. One thing we started last year was a Haunted Bridge Street event. It went over so well that we sold out in 4 days, a little under 4 days. We had limited our ticket sales to 60, and we were going to take these guided groups around, 6 tour guides to take groups of 10, excuse me. And it was great. Everything worked out fine, but like I mentioned, our biggest complaint was we sold out. So this year we made some changes. We're doing it again this year. But we had the city close 4 blocks for us instead of just 2. And we have 27 people in costume. We have 17 different vendors that'll be there. We have 4 different businesses, at least 4, that will be remaining open outside of their standard business hours for our event. We have 3 large gobo projectors, 3 small mobile projectors. We have vintage cars coming in from the Coyote Cruisers. We have the Chamber of Commerce who will have their spooky juice table out. I've roped in a lot of different people in the community to help get this thing going, and it seems that everybody's really on board with it. It's grown into something that, well, I'm excited. I'm really excited to see how this turns out. I just wanted to show you a couple other resources here. Our historic buildings that we have in Winnemucca. You might have seen the Winnemucca State Bank and Trust here at the top. On the left is an old photo of it. And after this picture, it was actually that whole front was covered. So in the mid 90s, I think it was 1997, the Phillips family owned it by that point. And they removed that whole covering and brought it back. And I think they did a darn good job making it look like it used to. It looks great. I should have brought you a photo that showed what it was like before they uncovered it. At the bottom of this page here is C.B. Brown's. That was built in 1909 after that 1905 fire I told you about earlier. And to the right of that is a picture of what it looks like today. So some of those things we're hoping to maybe bring back some of the old eventually, or encourage it. Here's another set of buildings. The Bell building, or the Giro building. There's actually 2 of them here. You see Cafe 345. The right-hand side is originally the Bell building as we know it, and the left-hand side was Dr. Giro's office. The right-hand side is made of adobe. It shows up on those 1885 Sanborn maps I told you about. However, the 1891 fire came. It didn't totally destroy that building. They were able to salvage it and parts of the neighboring building I'll tell you about a little bit too. So that building predates 1885, at least parts of it. You can go down in the alleyway and you can see those old adobe bricks. So that building was mended to its other half, the 345 side you see there, or Dr. Dro's office, about 1901. You can see off just to the far right or far left there is the little green building. That was actually Dr. Giro's house too. He died in that house. The bottom picture here is the fire station on Bridge Street in Winnemucca. That site has had a firehouse on it since the late 1800s also. This is not, of course, this is not the original firehouse. It was built in this one here was built in 1938, 39. They added those side bays on a little later. But the photo on the right-hand side is what it looks like today. The city had it stuccoed and repainted some years back. Looks pretty clean. And we have the Humboldt County Courthouse. So I wanted to show you all here. We have an older photo of the courthouse, the original courthouse here on the left. That one actually burnt down too. So like everything else, 1919, this one caught fire. So there's a picture of that courthouse on fire. That's from the backside. You can see a smaller building here, which was the jail. But they took the remains of that building also, what you see over here to the far right, and they rebuilt a courthouse. And that's the courthouse we have today. They finished rebuilding that in 1921. So it is 101 years old now. And down at the bottom is Staunton Saddlery. Staunton Saddlery, just like the bank building, is part of Phillips Furniture today. And Phillips Furniture actually encompasses 4 structures. So there's this little building here, which is now their mattress side too. And this was known as Silver State Saloon. This is Staunton Saddlery. And there's another smaller 1-story structure that they added onto it and built up. So it expanded the width of the building here. And Phillips Furniture also occupies, of course, the bank building. So there's actually 4 buildings in there. The interior, though, you should go and see if you've not seen it. They've done a really good job at keeping some of those original walls, so you can actually see some of the bricks there. It's really neat to check out. The Phillips family is also participating in our Haunted Bridge Street event this year, and they're dressing up. We've given them the biographies of some of the folks, including Mr. Staunton himself. So we'll see how they portray that. It'll be fun. And this is our event that I'm telling you about. Haunted Bridge Street. Again, it's coming up, it's this Saturday, it's next Saturday, the 29th at 5 o'clock. So we've actually worked with the Chamber of Commerce on this so that their business trick-or-treating will start at 2 p.m. and end at 5 p.m. right when our event starts. So we're hoping to get some of those families downtown also. This really isn't going to be a gory event. This is more of, like I've told people, it's a light show, not a bloodbath. Let's keep it light and fun. It's really a way to get people to understand the downtown in a fun way. You know, a lot of folks don't like to be sitting and listening to somebody just talk. Kind of funny. And some people don't like to read books. You know, this might just be a fun way to do it. We also have these QR codes too that'll be downtown with more of a Halloween theme. So we have 2 different digital tours people can take, but the Halloween themed QR codes people can scan and hear and see some of the images too. So with all this going on, the museum is really doing well. It's really hard to stay on top of everything almost. It's just so busy. Like I mentioned earlier, our full staff are me and the 2 ladies you saw in those images earlier, Lindsay and Nell. We also have a couple folks that come in 1 day a week and 1 routine volunteer. And that's it. That's all we have. Everything else we have to find help with or hire somebody or do something along those lines, because we're not a county facility. We're a private nonprofit. So we're a little weird on our own up here. So our plans, though, call for an expansion. We just received 5.74 acres from the city of Winnemucca for an expansion of Humboldt Museum, and I'm super happy about that. That was a good thing to have done. But now the work begins. We have 10 years to start and build on that building, on that land. So our plans are needed. We need a warehouse to put all of our stuff in. But the warehouse, we'd like to see it be a multifunctional warehouse where it would have roll doors. We could take our large items in and out. We could also open those doors and allow visitors to walk along all of the farm implements, wagons, cars, things along those lines. But we would like to have a collections and storage room, a workspace area, and maybe a small office in that building behind the museum. We would also then free up our outdoor storage area, and we would love to see a mini amphitheater built there instead someday. And then to enclose our courtyard, and where the old collections room in our building is, well, our current collections room right now, we would like to turn that into exhibit space. And on the very back of our existing brick structure is actually a plug wall. So we have to pull that plug someday. And we want to pull that out and expand the museum out that direction as well, towards the existing parking lot. So there's a lot of plans we have for it. The deed itself should be getting recorded the end of this week. So we're getting signatures on it. Everything's approved by the council and the city attorneys, and everything's great there. We're going to be getting our plans drawn up real soon. We will be going out and seeking grant funds and trying to expand this facility over the next 10 years. So be on the lookout for that happening. Our next event coming up after Haunted Bridge Street will be our holiday art show and sale. We do this as an annual event. It's mostly fine art. So we have, a lot of paintings, some pottery. This year we're getting some interesting, some new items. We're getting metal work. I'm so happy to see that. And everybody who's a part of this is local. We have some amazing artists. I should have probably pulled some more photos up for that too. But again, just maybe if you're interested, you find yourself out here, have nothing to do, come and check out the museum. This is also the same day as the Chamber of Commerce's Parade of Lights in Winnemucca down Bridge Street. So yeah, that's about it. This slide right here, again, has a QR code. If you want to take a picture of that real quick, you could scan that with your phone and hop right into some of our tours of downtown Winnemucca. And I'm ready for your questions if you have them for me.
Oh, that was wonderful, Dana. That was really a really good program, and you really covered a lot of great things. And I know you're always so busy with, all the different projects, and we were talking beforehand, and Neil and I both were commenting on how much we appreciate your website and the different things you have on there. But I learned so much and I think everybody else too, is just seeing the evolution of your organization and how much you've grown. So it's wonderful that the city is really supporting you guys. So,
absolutely.
But I do have some questions I see and was given some notes. Did Winnemucca shrink in population following the fires, or was the town generally rebuilt every time?
It was rebuilt. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's
Okay.
enough traffic out here to keep that going. And the cyclic mining industry, if there's a strike nearby or a happening mine, definitely there would be that pull to keep going, keep this. And being a railroad town, it wasn't too quiet.
Okay. Because because definitely booms and busts definitely can impact the size of the community. So, I've wondered if that kind of impacted that as well. Okay. There's another one. It says, when was the last big fire? I think you kind of were mentioning the one with the picture, or is there been some since then?
So there have been, I would call them big fires. We have, maybe they didn't take down a whole block, but we've had several large fires just taking down a single structure. So the Humboldt Hotel fire, that was a big one in 1975. The Star, that one burnt down in the mid-80s. The Nixon, everybody remembers that one, 92. That's an arson fire never solved. Those are big impacted fires to our community as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, especially the Nixon building. So,
Yeah.
So I definitely have some more questions for you. There's a mention, do you have the totem poles at the museum?
Well, I wouldn't call them totem poles, but we do have the native carvings.
Oh, okay.
The likelihood,
Okay.
yeah. They are actually made of hemlock. Joe Mackey had those carved when he was running the casinos here in Winnemucca.
Oh,
So they're part of the
okay.
commercial history. I know not everybody appreciates the old cigar store Indian type thing. But but it is part of our commercial history of Winnemucca, and they are very prominently shown, and they're fondly remembered by a lot of people who grew up here too. So they
Okay.
are in our museum. Mhm.
Okay. So you were saying, the Josh house had burnt down and we're showing pictures. What year was it rebuilt? Did it get rebuilt?
It did get rebuilt 1902.
Oh, 1902. Okay.
But it was ultimately all of Chinatown was torn down in 1955. Anything that was remaining was torn down. They wanted to pull through Fifth Street, and with the new library plans coming in, the new library was built right there on the corner where the Kwong Long store used to be, and they constructed that library in 67. So not long after they demolished the entire Chinatown.
Okay. So do you have very many items besides the some of the items from the Joss house that document some of the history of the Chinese town community?
We don't have a whole lot. What we have are
Okay.
a couple photographs, some of the oral histories, and we do have a few items, but unfortunately, a lot of our Chinese items are not from Winnemucca. They actually are from Lovelock. There was a donor from Lovelock who did a great job of understanding the Chinese history and trying to preserve some of that over there. So he shared his knowledge and his items with us here.
Oh,
Mhm.
that's wonderful. That's wonderful. You already kind of answered some of this, but they were asking any types of festivals. You mentioned you have your holiday and then the haunted, but is there any or other festivals planned in the future or upcoming exhibits you might want to talk about?
Well, I didn't mention it, but we have a new exhibit here. It's oh my goodness, I can never say it correctly. It's a new ichthyosaur, a new species.
Oh,
And we got the casting in a few months back, but we really have yet to do a nice polished incorporation into our existing exhibit of the early giant marine swimming reptiles. But the skull alone is over 6 foot, and that's to scale. It's a new species. It's huge. So the body is another 53 feet, if I remember correctly. We only have the skull here, which is plenty for us right now. But that is something I would love. I when we did school tours and I show the kids that their jaws drop. They love it. And I pass around the little tooth casting. And that's one of the greatest things we like to have here. But we'll be doing an opening for that at some point. And we also have been doing membership appreciation day events as well. So if members are invited to come, it's free stuff. We have some sort of entertainment with some food and drink for them. That's once a month. We're trying to figure out our schedule, how we want to handle that going into 23. We might make some changes for next year, but those are regular events. We also do the school district art show every March, the entire month of March. This year,
nice.
we're also in December, we're going to be hosting the Friends of the Black Rock Artists in Residence again for probably a couple of weeks through the new year, I'm expecting. Yeah, and we're also working with the Lions Club and a new youth group that we've started forming last year. It's called Community Cubbies. So we'll be working with that youth group again on a regular intervals. I still need to work on my calendar. We will have some guest speakers. I have a list going. We just need to solidify that a little bit.
Okay. Well, I know you're always busy, so
Yeah.
that's good.
We're gonna get the Haunted Bridge Street over with and then work on other stuff.
Can you talk a little bit more about the demolition of the Winnemucca Hotel? Because you mentioned in 2015, was it just in such poor condition, or I guess maybe if you can elaborate on it a little bit?
So that's what I understand. I do believe, and this, I really wasn't involved in too much in making that decision on how they wanted to proceed with it. That they did have a structural engineer go in, and the report came back pretty bad. I do know that, if it's a valid building that has enough history, you could pretty much do a lot of mitigation to solve those issues. But it just wasn't warranted at the time, I suppose. It just, the holders of the building, the Historical Society just wasn't ready at that point to step in. We just didn't have it together. But the Winnemucca Convention and Visitor Authority, I believe, are the ones that helped to look into the structural engineering on that and ultimately decided that it wasn't going to be worth their while to proceed. The family that inherited the structure ultimately made the call to do the demolition.
Okay.
They sold the property to people who own a restaurant that abuts the lot. And they actually were the ones that hired the demolition to start. And it took a long time because they were trying to salvage materials.
Well, I think it's great though that you were able to incorporate some of the bricks and the wood into your exhibit for the
We did
basque.
get in
Yeah.
there and we took so many photos and videos before they started any demolish.
That's wonderful. Neil, you were going to ask something?
Yes, I wanted to ask Dana about the involvement with the mining. There's a huge amount of people, including my brother-in-law, that work for the mines. How active have they been in helping with exhibits that would pertain to that industry and the Historical Society itself as far as its worth? Are they with you?
Well, yes, but there's room for improvement, probably. I would love, I should have showed you a slide. So about a year ago, maybe a little longer now, they invited me to go out, one of the mines anyway, in Nevada Gold, invited me to go out to Turquoise Ridge and take a look at the old Getchell schoolhouse. And they were considering donating that schoolhouse to Humboldt Museum. So I went out there to take a look at it. We had some photos of it in the old town site. And while I was going through it, I kind of felt that it was very plain and utilitarian and would probably take more work to move it than it was probably worth based, you know, it was just very ordinary. But inside of that building, I noticed that there was a cannonball safe that said Winnemucca State Bank and Trust.
Oh,
I thought, oh boy, that's what I got my eyes on right there, right? So they did work with us. They got it transported into Winnemucca. We did get that safe placed back into the bank building of Phillips Furniture, and it is there for the public to see now. So that was an awesome thing for them to do for us. That was the most recent interaction that I've had. Now they do have another committee that they formed, and it's local stakeholders have a say in how they're helping to fund some of the charitable projects in our community. So we know as community members where we have deficiencies. And so the people who run those mines may not even live here. The people that make the call, we're just more attached to it. So they have these monthly meetings between Battle Mountain and Winnemucca, and they allow comments and reviews on applications for assistance. So for those types of charitable projects. So I do think that they are working. They're trying. Yeah.
okay. That's all I got.
Yeah.
So is the Safeway store still standing, the building that
That's a good
were
question.
showing?
Honestly, that's in Lovelock, and I'm not too sure.
Okay,
have
all
to
right.
go
Well, it was
look.
such a cool building, so I was distracted by the car.
I know they
but-
had an old Lovelock a while back. I remember shopping in there about 15 years ago, and I thought, oh, this is interesting. I do have a book. We did. It's about Winnemucca, downtown Winnemucca. I got a grant 2019 from Nevada Main Street, the Go-Ed office, and it is broken down into color sections. The downtown area, and the different chapters are your colors. So they correspond each different location. Just flip it randomly and you can see the pink section there, and you can see one of those gas stations and some of the old photos there in the text, the history. So there are 72 properties interpreted in that, and we sell these in a few locations downtown and here at the museum. They're $5. Kind of complements the QR code that you see on the screen still, maybe. Yeah, they go together.
Oh, that's awesome. That's
Mhm.
a very cool project
Yeah,
and it's affordable. So then,
right. That's
So-
Mhm.
yeah, I was gonna say, because you could have it, but it may be too expensive for some people. So that's a really cool project that you did. So do you have anything else you want to mention? I mean, you've covered so many things, and I know you guys are continually busy with projects, but it's amazing just the growth and the projects that the museum and working with the city and the county work together. So
I think so. And we're starting to
Yeah.
see outer areas too. So Denio called and they said, hey, what can we maybe find some funding to help us with our library buildings we have up here? They wanted to do an annex building. It's an old hotel. It actually was on the Oregon side. They moved it over the border to the Denio side in the 50s when they relocated the post office, and it officially became Denio, Nevada, but they wanted to know, well, what can we do? Is there any assistance to help make this happen? And now I'm helping those kinds of things too. It's not just downtown, but I'm going, okay, what can we do for you up there? And I'm giving little clues to these people and to that people. And it's just neat to see, how one thing can lead to another. It just, you have to start somewhere, and they can see what we're doing here. And they're like, how can we do that up here? So it's a good,
Well,
it's a good thing.
it is, and you have that experience, and you're a good resource to be able to help others. But yeah, I think your museum definitely is a good model for others to be able to see what's potential.
It takes a lot of work, and you need
Mhm.
dedicated assistance. My board of directors and my volunteers have made a huge difference over the years. Absolutely.
That's wonderful.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Well, gosh, Dana, this was just lovely. It was a wonderful
Thank you.
program, and we
I
so
appreciate being
appreciate it.
included in it. This is great.
Yeah, no, it
you.
was lovely. So I was so glad, Neil, when we were coming up lists, he's like, let's start incorporating some different museums. Since we're doing Zoom and working with the library, we're able to reach a wider audience and reach people around the state. So we so appreciate you and being our speaker today. So
Thank you.
yay. So thank you everybody for being here today, and I'll send it back to Terry, and just thank you again, Washoe County, as always, for helping us do our wonderful programs.
Yes, what a great program. Such an honor to have hosted. Thank you all for joining us, and a heartfelt thanks to Sherry Hayes Zorn with the Nevada Historical Society, historian Dana Toth, and John, our library system tech wizard, for making this event possible. Bye-bye.
Bye.